For centuries, Rome looked unstoppable. Its roads stretched across continents. Its armies crushed enemies on every frontier. Its laws shaped the world. So how did the greatest power of the ancient world slowly crack, split apart, and finally disappear in the West? The shocking answer is this: Rome did not fall all at once. It unraveled. And the real reason is even more unsettling than a single invasion or one bad emperor. Because when people ask, why did the Roman Empire fall? They usually want one dramatic answer. A brutal war, a savage enemy, a single disaster, but history rarely works that cleanly. The fall of Rome was a long chain of problems, each one making the next one worse. Political chaos, economic stress, foreign invasions, civil war, disease, and a government that became too big, too expensive, and too divided to hold itself together. To understand how Rome collapsed, we first need to understand how powerful it was. At its peak, the empire controlled huge parts of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Millions of people lived under Roman rule. Trade moved across the Mediterranean. Grain from Egypt fed cities in Italy. Soldiers guarded borders that stretched for thousands of miles. For a long time, Rome seemed permanent. But that strength created a hidden weakness. The empire was massive, and massive empires are hard to control. When the government was strong, Rome could manage its armies, taxes, and provinces. But when the system began to wobble, every problem spread fast. One of the biggest problems was political instability. Roman emperors often came to power through force, not peaceful planning. After an emperor died, ambitious generals, politicians, and bodyguards might all fight for the throne. Sometimes several men claimed to be emperor at the same time. Civil wars became common. And every time Rome turned its weapons inward, its borders became weaker. Then came the money problem. The empire needed enormous sums to pay soldiers, defend frontiers, and keep the capital running. When revenues dropped, Roman leaders tried to solve it by lowering the amount of precious metal in coins. On paper, this made it seem like there was still enough money. In reality, it helped drive inflation and damaged trust in the economy. Prices rose, trade became harder, taxes became more painful, and ordinary people felt the pressure first. But the story gets worse. As the western part of the empire struggled, pressure on the borders increased. Germanic groups and other migrating peoples pushed into Roman territory. Some were fleeing their own enemies. Some were looking for land, safety, or opportunity. The Roman world was not just attacked from outside. It was also being transformed by movement, conflict, and settlement on a scale it could not fully control. One of the most famous moments came when the city of Rome was sacked in 410 CE by the Visigoths. That event shocked the ancient world. Rome had been seen as untouchable for so long that many people could hardly believe it had been breached. But this was not the final end. It was a sign that the empire's defenses were failing. And then there was another layer. The empire itself was divided. In 395 CE, the Roman Empire was split into eastern and western halves. This was meant to make administration easier. In some ways it did, but it also revealed a deep problem. The Eastern Empire was richer, more stable, and easier to defend. The Western Empire, with fewer resources and more exposed borders, became increasingly fragile. Over time, the two have stopped acting like one united system. So why didn't Rome simply recover? Because every solution created new problems. The empire relied more and more on non-Roman soldiers, including foreign troops and leaders. That did not automatically cause collapse, but it did show how desperate the West had become. At the same time, emperors changed rapidly. Power shifted from one leader to another. Some rulers lasted only months. Others had little real control outside the capital or their military base. There were also natural pressures. Archaeologists and historians point to evidence of crop failures, famine, and disease in some periods. When food production weakened, cities suffered. When people were hungry and sick, the state became weaker still. Again and again, Rome faced problems it could handle alone, but not all at once. Here is the key point. Rome did not fall because one single thing broke. It fell because the entire system lost balance. The army was expensive. The economy was strained. Politics was unstable. Borders were under pressure, and the government could no longer respond fast enough to every threat. The Western Empire became more vulnerable with each decade. The biggest revelation is this. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE was more of a final symbol than a sudden apocalypse. When the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was removed from power, the empire had already been weakened for generations. By then, Roman authority in the West had shrunk dramatically. Local rulers, military leaders, and new kingdoms had already taken control in many areas. So the fall of Rome was not one event. It was a long collapse of Roman power in the West. The Eastern Empire, which we call the Byzantine Empire today, continued for nearly 1,000 more years. That means Rome did not vanish overnight. It changed, split, and survived in different forms. And maybe that is the most important lesson of all. Rome was not destroyed by weakness alone. It was destroyed by pressure, size, division, and the slow failure to adapt fast enough. It is a reminder that even the greatest powers can break when too many problems arrive at once. So when you hear that Rome fell, remember this. The empire did not simply collapse in a single moment. It slowly came apart, piece by piece, until one day the world realized that the old order was gone forever.